the cloud. Here we go. Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I am so pleased that you joined me for today's show. My Life as a Landlord. Listen to all of you who wanted to know about more actual landlording case studies and real estate investment case studies. And we started this calendar year in 2025 with episode 109 with a British Columbia landlord. And today we are doing another case study, but this one is a bigger dive. I'm recording today from Maui, Hawaii, and my guest is not on Maui, Hawaii, like many of my guests, but he has an interesting aerospace background and is wound up in real estate. He's traveled to all 7 continents, currently resides in Virginia. He's not only going to walk us through a real estate transaction, he's also going to talk to us about a tenancy that went sideways and lots of decision points in this case study. Let's see. I could go on and on, but let's just get to it. Welcome to the show, Flint Jamison. I
Thanks for
wanted to
having
brag
me.
on you more.
Not necessary. We'll
Oh,
have
gee.
plenty to talk about.
Of course. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show today and all the decisions that you made. So let's talk about how you ended up with this. This was sort of like it wasn't next door. This was in a different place. Tell us about this deal.
Yeah. So maybe rewind a little bit
Sure.
where I was in my life just to build this out because your listeners probably wanna hear. I was yeah in aerospace designing, modifying aircraft most of my life, and at this particular point, I was a program manager modifying aircraft for the Air Force. So it was a heavy workload to say the least. And at some point, I was like, you know what? I just really want to start building out my real estate portfolio. So I'd been researching the BRRRR strategy, doing the bigger pockets thing on podcasts while walking my dog. I mean, I did it for like a year. And eventually I decided, it's time to dive in. And I came across this, it's almost a turnkey BRRRR operation. Uh, these people aren't in business anymore, but they basically wholesaled properties outside of Milwaukee, distressed homes, and then they would put a complete package together that says, "Here's the home, you buy it for this much. Here's how much it's going to cost to rehab it, and then at the end, here's what your rent growth will be." Like they gave me basically all the underwriting and due diligence, and they had built in they were realtors, plus they had their GCs in place. They had economies of scale. They were doing a whole bunch of these. So it was like, here, just buy one of these and we'll do all the work. And here's how much it's going to cost. And here's what the results look like. And so I was like, you know what? I'm super busy. Let's try this. That was the beginning.
Okay.
Um, so I can dive in a little bit on the numbers, get nerdy here. It's a duplex, so it's an upper and lower unit. The entire thing cost $80,000, and I ended up doing a hard money loan for that, and then I was paying cash for all the renovations. So 80,000 hard money plus it. Now that I have the data in front of me, I remember it's $30,000 or close to $35,000 worth of rehab estimated cost. And they they lined itemed everything out that needed to be done. I ended up flying out there. We toured the property, very distressed, had 2 tenants in it. Uh, just a gnarly situation. And that being my first step into it, I was like, oh geez, what did I just buy? Cabinet doors falling off, carpets just horrible, walls destroyed. You just look in the bathroom, you're like, is this even fixable? So talking with the GC, they're like, "Yep, this is all normal. We're good." I was like, "All right, I'm gonna trust the process." So yeah, I flew home and I was like, "All right, I hope I made the right decision." Um, and at that point, they said it was going to take about 3 months to burr, to rehab, I should say. I picked it up in 2018, the summer of 2018, and it ended up taking them 6 months and an extra probably $10,000. So I'll break down a couple of the heavy hitters that were unknowns, and this is, I guess, a lesson learned when it comes to rehab. you are likely not to find things until you get into rehab, and that's where you'll find things, and it's going to cost you more. So they say plan for 10%. You're probably going to want to plan for more than that. The two heavy hitters that stand out to me is we knew that the carpet needed to go, and we knew that underneath that carpet was basically 70s linoleum that had been glued down to the original wood floor from I think it was a 1957 build. So I was like, I want to go back down to that 1957 wood floor. So carpet's gone, 70s laminate, tried to start scraping it. I think on the lower unit, it was scrapable, but a lot of work. On the upper unit, they used some sort of glue. Like they may have epoxied that thing down, and it was going to take them probably 3-4 weeks using lots of chemicals. And eventually, I said, all right, back off. We're just going to carpet it. It's going to be carpet. But all the labor it took to scrape what they did scrape, and even the lower unit, was a lot of work. Successfully got it down, sanded it, refinished that wood floor. That cost more than what we had anticipated, and it took a lot more time than what we had anticipated. Now, the biggest heavy hitter was it had a 2-car garage separate from the main house, and it was wired, had a light switch, garage door. We're like, cool, we'll just put in a garage door opener and make sure the light bulb works, because there was a light switch and a light bulb, and we're like, all right, well, the light bulb's out. Turns out there was no power at all to the property, which is weird that they wired a light switch and actually installed a light bulb. But that's why note to self, check to make sure some things actually have power. We should have gone to the breaker. We should have just checked the bulb, but that ended up being trenching a power line from the main house, which cost, I don't remember at this point, but it was way more than I originally had planned, just to put in a garage door opener and a light in that garage. So all told, 6 months, it cost me about another $10,000. So I believe it was about 40,000 in. So 80,000 purchase. Maybe 40. Yeah, that was about it. 40,000 to 45,000. And then we got the tenants in, and at that point I refied. Now, I didn't get cash out because the cost to get everything to where it was, the bank is just like, here, we'll just give you financing for what you essentially put into it. So no cash out. So I say I failed the BRRRR, but I successfully gotten a duplex. And it was cash flow positive at that point. I was getting about $300 per unit per month. So I'll
you're
stop
paying
there before we
down.
get into the next exciting
No,
thing.
that's good though. But so let's talk about this for a second. So you bought a packaged deal. What kind of neighborhood was it? What kind of unit and what kind of neighborhood? Are we talking
Yeah.
C
Yeah.
minus?
Absolutely C minus property, definitely in a C area. So it was basically North Milwaukee,
Okay.
just northwest of downtown. Yeah, very C neighborhood. So
Okay. Now,
no, very cookie cutter duplexes all around that neighborhood.
was this your first dive into real estate at all? Have you done other
Yep.
real estate deals before that?
No, not except for my primary residence. So that was
Okay.
my first investment.
So your first investment, you went a couple time zones over, a plane trip away.
Yep.
Um, Lessons learned. Budget longer, budget more rehab,
Yep.
trust but verify. What other lessons learned? I mean, there's other people listening to this going, maybe I should or maybe I shouldn't do this. What advice do you have for them?
Um, to be honest, I'm not against the turnkey services. I think when you get into these heavily distressed apartments and old, this was 1957 and had been through many other real estate. I don't know if there was ever person who owned it as a primary residence. I think it just continued to get passed on by another investor. I bought it from a bigger institution that just had forgotten about it and had cared less and was offloading it for clearly cheap, 80,000. Um, I think if you do find turnkey services out there, I know they exist. Couldn't refer any, but if you get into like a class B, or I just think even in multifamily, what I do now, when we look at class C apartment buildings, and oftentimes we try to turn a class C into a B, um, you have to know you're going to be spending so much on CapEx. And I think you have to do extra deep dive, maybe get multiple quotes, have multiple GCs walk the property because they're all going to probably find something different. And I was just relying on the one.
Mhm.
And
So
actually,
multiple folds. Okay.
at one point, someone had reached out to me and they wanted to sell their uh, partially rehabbed property to me. I was like, I don't know. And I spent the minimum like $150 just to send an inspector out. Should have done that. But on this other property I didn't end up buying, the inspector found so much wrong with it. Like the electrical panel was super bad, needed to completely be redone. I don't know what
Mhm.
that cost, but way more than it's worth.
Right.
So I think just getting some other third party people in there to
Money
verify.
well spent.
Yeah.
Money well spent. Well, now when you were doing this rehab, was the GC managing it for you? Who was sort of your eyes
Yeah.
and ears? Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of this turnkey service. They had as part of the turnkey service, they had a GC as part of that company. So they were managing it.
Okay. So at the end of the rehab, took longer, took more money. You've got tenants in. You're able to refi and
Yeah, get
regroup,
out of the hard money loan.
get out
Yeah.
of the hard money loan that is the one that's really painful, especially when you're paying a lot more months than you
Yeah.
anticipated with
Yeah.
no revenue. So you're just paying out of pocket.
Yep.
Well, you're paying out of your budget, but so at this point, now you've got a rehabbed rental several times over, several time zones over. I'm assuming you hired a property manager.
Yeah. 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 So part of the service, they were working with a local property manager that was kind of giving like this discount rate because they were bringing so many people into it.
Okay.
Um, I never really liked them. They seemed uh, like a not a very good property management company, but they placed the tenants and things were going okay for a long time. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And I'd have them go in and they would walk the property, they'd inspect it. Every once in a while, someone would have to go out and fix a leak or fix a broken thing here or there. So they were doing their thing. At one point, I did shop for another one just because I didn't like how responsive they were. They
Is
weren't
that
very responsive.
what was sort of your gut feeling? I mean, so this you didn't like them, you went with them because they were packaged with the wholesale
Well, I didn't
deal.
realize I didn't like them until I was probably in with them for at least a year. And then I started
Okay.
noticing it's just like the response time just wasn't that great. So yeah, I don't, to be honest, this was 6 years ago or 5 years ago by the time I realized that I don't remember the nuances of maybe I should look for someone else. Maybe there's a better team out there. And I did look, but I didn't succeed finding someone else. I think when I reached out to some really big PM companies and I was like, hey, I have this little class C duplex. And I think they're like, we do multifamily. You're tiny. So I likely reached out to all the wrong players, but I ended up not switching, just kept rolling. The other lesson learned is maybe as we get into the story towards sale, I should have made a point to at least go out there once a year and walk the property because it's going to become very obvious as I start part two of my
Well,
story.
yeah, tell us. So,
So,
I mean, we left off, you've refied, you've got tenants in,
yeah,
you've got a property management company that's sort of, kind of came with the package, and then what?
yeah. So, when we were, oh, this is okay. I just remembered part of the story. When we were looking for tenants, or my property management was looking for tenants, it aligned with a time when I flew down to Chile to do an 8-day backpack trip in Patagonia. So I kind of left this stuff on my wife's hands, who wasn't involved in any of this. She's just like, this is your thing. Go, you're doing it. And then the timing was really, really bad as this new property management company is looking for new tenants. And uh luckily I was in within internet range before I disappeared for 8 days in the wilderness. Got an email that said, hey, we found a great tenant. It's one lady wants to sign the lease for both units, and she wants to take care of her two elderly aunts. So her aunts will live on the first floor. And through some program, which I don't know what they're referring to at that time, they're like, they are handicapped, so they do want to make handicap modifications to your property or the lower unit. I'm like, okay, so they'll widen some doors and they put a ramp and stuff into the front door. I was like, in the end, that might add value because it'll make a stickier tenant. Or in the future, there's probably a lot of people that could utilize that. So
Hmm.
cool, roll with it. One tenant paying both. So flash forward to 2022. Remember, this was, I think the tenants got in there January of 2019, and they're paying consistently. COVID hit, still paying consistently. I thought they were getting government assistance, so that's why that even with COVID, everything was fine. January of 2022 comes around, all COVID's done, everyone's back doing their thing. She stops paying. I'm like, okay, property management, what are you going to do? They're like, well, we're going to help her with rental assistance because at that time, post COVID, there's still rental assistance. And they're like, yeah, she's not paying. We're going to help her fill out her paperwork. We do everything we can. February comes around, and I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of tired of this. I've moved on to apartments at this point. Like, I'm tired of this property. Let's just $300 a month per unit. It's not really that money isn't really special. So let's let's dump it. And I put it up for sale, or I contacted a real estate agent. Meanwhile, we're still working on rental assistance because I'll get back pay. So I guess I wasn't too concerned knowing that the rental assistance was going to back pay and she's not paying. I hire someone referred me to a real estate agent who works with real estate investors. Like, perfect.
Okay.
And she shows up to the property with like 2 days notice and immediately sees a sign in the front yard that says sunshine home care for Alzheimer's patients or something like that.
Oh
And so
no.
I reached back out to the property management company. I was like, what are you guys doing? You guys have been in and out of there doing random repairs. Tree branch had fallen at one point in a windstorm, took out the neighbor's fence, which was another cost. And you had been to the property plenty of times. How come you didn't know that she's running a geriatric Alzheimer's care facility out of there? And they gave me excuses. They're like, well, we give her time and we give her notice before we walk the property. And I was like, she doesn't hide two beds per bedroom. Turns out there was two twin beds per bedroom. Each unit had 3 bedrooms. So she did live in the upper unit by herself, but the lower unit, there was 6 beds total, 3 beds, 1 bath. I was like, you can't hide 3 beds. And they gave me some stupid excuse. And what's funny is somewhere along the line, the tenant ended up writing the email saying she's taking care of her two elderly uncles. I was like, oh, I remember you saying two elderly aunts.
Ends.
Yeah. So I at, at that point I was like, property management company, I'm laying my fist down on them at this point. I'm like, you guys screwed this up big time. She's broke her lease. My liability, I didn't realize my liability exposure for a senior care facility was going on in my property. She was running a commercial operation out of my duplex. I went to her website and I took a bunch of screenshots. It's no longer up, but she was charging $3,500 per bed.
For bed.
I was charging total for the entire duplex 1750.
For both units. That's all in.
Uh
Or per
yeah,
unit.
I think it was total all
Okay.
in 1750. Um, yeah, and she was charging 3,500 per bed.
So 7 grand per room, 3 room, 21,000 per month. And
Yeah.
and then she stops paying rent.
And then she stopped paying. What's wild is my real estate agent was able to tell me much more than the property manager. She's like, "Yeah, your tenant, she's driving around in a super new Mercedes, really flashy Mercedes, like, and she can't pay the rent, 1750." She did
Because
have
she's not
caretakers.
paying. She's not, it's not
Yeah,
she
yeah,
can't. She's not.
she's not. Um, Oddly enough, my real estate agent told me that this has been a problem in Milwaukee. Like, lots of people do this. If they're unlicensed, they go and buy up duplexes, fourplexes, and just like behind the scenes start running these care facilities and make a bunch of
Mhm.
money. So Milwaukee has a bunch of laws in place there that like to crack down on this. But yeah, we had one. She did have caretakers. So she was paying for caretakers to take care of her patients on the first floor. But finally, it didn't take long for my agent to find a buyer because she had a deep network of a bunch of real estate investors. So she just pinged her network. Some guy came in and fully told him, "Hey, this is what's happening. This tenant's still in there, but they've broken their lease. Do you want it?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll pay cash." And so it was like within 2 weeks, it converted. It was sold. Um, and that was probably the first week of April that it sold. So about a week later, my real estate agent sends me this really long text and said, "Flint, you got out just in time. Your tenant was telling her staff that she was supposed to be paying that she had owned the place." Like, I guess once it came known that I was going to sell the property and she was having to move out, all of a sudden the staff were like, "Wait, why are you all of a sudden having worried about this property? I thought you owned it." And then it came and they weren't getting paid. So a whole bunch of lies was intermixed into this. And and that week later, that whole text was written because I guess the tenant, was locked in the apartment or in the upper floor because the staff were marching out front with guns demanding to be paid. I don't know where the like if she had patients in there at that time, but I was like, dang, I
Oh
just
my
got
goodness.
out of that
Drama,
one.
drama, drama. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what happened to it? I mean, so the website's down. Did the next owner like just evict completely and start over?
Yeah, I know that he evicted. Um, he didn't keep it for very long. I found
Oh,
out through random. Oh, here's another lesson learned. The utilities, Milwaukee Utilities or whatever it was. Me as the owner of the property gets my name is on there. I think this is normal. Um, and if the tenant doesn't pay, they come after me to pay the utility bill. Well, so like 2 years later, in my credit score, I get um, a notice for unpaid bill.
on your
Like,
personal credit.
yeah, on my personal credit because my credit score
What?
dropped like 150 points overnight. I'm like, what
What?
happened?
Yeah, what's
And so
up?
there was a claim, and it's like the repo people were coming. I was like, whoa, what's no? They weren't sending repo people, but they're definitely sending claims after me. And so I did some digging and finally found out it was this utility company. And after many hours on the phone, like, what's going on? I found out that the bill was for in 2023 or something that wasn't paid. It was like $3,000 that hadn't been paid, and my name had defaulted back into it. So I never
Oh,
fully cleared. This is the lesson. I never fully cleared my name from that utility. And the lady that was at the utility service was looking at all the logs and she said, "Yeah, it looks like you left and someone new took over. Yep, the person I sold it to. And then like 6 months later, someone else took over it. Like, it had changed hands multiple times before it eventually defaulted back into my name because someone wasn't paying." So the property has been through a lot.
well, it sounds like at least the other lesson learned is pay attention to your credit. I monitor my credit.
Yep.
I think your credit score is one of the most valuable assets that you have because it shows your credibility. It proves to lots of people that you want to do business with
Yeah.
that you can pay your time, you can pay your bills on time. And so good for you for monitoring and for digging in, but insert the headache there because
Yeah.
now you've got to stop and dispute this, right? I'm assuming they eventually removed it from your credit and it
Yeah.
was figured out.
Yeah. Eventually it came off pretty quick, but it took a lot of effort on the
Hmm.
phone and challenging. Like I tried to go through the credit bureaus where you can challenge the line item or whatever they call it. But
Right.
yeah, they kept coming back saying, nope, it's valid. Like, how is this
No, it's
valid? So
not. Yeah, no,
fixed it.
then
So
you have to go, then you had to go to the utility company, I'm assuming,
yep.
and then fight them,
Yep.
especially since title had already changed. Oh my goodness. Wow. So you went from aerospace to nightmare sales transaction that was packaged, nightmare tenancy. You ended up finding a buyer right away that
Yeah.
story ended up continuing. But it sounds like that didn't deter you from real estate, which is good. So
No.
tell us the rest of the story. You had this
Yeah.
duplex going on, but tell us the rest because you're still in real estate.
So yeah. Yeah. Now I'm at like 2,400 units. Actually, well, before I go there, I don't think I said I sold the property for I believe it was 170. So
Oh,
I bought it at 2018, and then April of 22, right before, man, I timed that well. Lesson learned, time the market really well. If you have a magic 8 ball. Um, yeah, I sold it for 170. So I came out ahead. I mean, it was cash flowing up until that January of 22. So, and I think I did the rental assistance did come through, so I got the back pay. So I really didn't lose any money other than having to pay extra on rehab.
and a bit of stress, which sometimes
Yeah.
that's a factor with some folks bigger than
Yes.
others.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a stress bit to that.
Yeah.
But tell us the
So
rest of the story.
yeah, so flashback to like 2019-ish, I come back from Chile, and I'm cash flowing $300 per unit profit. And I realized that $300 per unit, and Bigger Pockets was saying $200 per unit was about average profit for most real estate investors. I'm like, I should just do the math on that. What's it take to just make $100,000? 50 units. I mean, it's pretty easy math. And I was like, 50 units. Dang, that's a lot of work considering what I had just gone through. That cost me a lot of money just to get that $300 per unit. So I, once again, walking my dog, I'm on podcasts again, and all of a sudden I come across syndications, team up with people and go buy apartment buildings, economies of scale. And it's like, oh, I don't have to be the expert in everything, and I don't have to bring all the capital and put sweat equity. So I dove into that hard. Now, it took me a long time before I truly took action. Like I was educating myself, but I was, lesson learned. You can often take action sooner than you realize you can. Um, but I just felt like I needed to learn more and more. That's the engineer in me. Like I have to know everything, and I have to know it everything really to a deep base of knowledge. So I finally took action in 21, 22. And long story short, closed on at that same time. I wasn't getting paid in January of 22. In February 22, we closed on our first 104 unit apartment building. So
Congratulations.
yeah. And
That's
then
awesome.
by May of that year, we closed on 550 unit, 3 property portfolio. So 3 apartments in 3 different cities, 2 states. So yeah.
But I want to be clear because I know I have some newbies listening here. I want to be clear that this was a group, hence the word
Yes.
syndication. It's a
Yes.
team that together you're evaluating the property, you're finding capital, you're very meticulously checking the capital expenditures, the capex, the money that has to go in. You're checking the market rates. Like the team does this, not
Yes.
just
Yes.
you
Yes.
doing a duplex.
Right. Yeah. And I don't own 100% of that 104 units. I own
Right.
a small percentage of it. But the wonderful thing is where I ended up still working, I was still at my job doing this nights and weekends, but I can feel more comfortable that I'm doing this remote. I have a team of people who are have complementary skills. There's someone out there doing acquisitions. I mean, running around the country trying to find uh, deals that work. Having lunch with brokers. There's a lot of effort in it, and
Hmm.
balancing and checking everyone's in the underwriting, asking questions. So it gives you a lot more confidence that you're all in the same rowboat together.
That's amazing. That's very cool. Well, I'm excited about that. And you're still doing syndications today, right? That's what
Yes.
you're doing because you're no longer in
Yeah.
aerospace. You're doing
Yep. I quit. Yeah, I left my day job in January 23. Um, and yeah, I continued to grow. So I ended up in this capital raising. I ended up so out of the full team, there's everyone's kind of got their thing. I ended up as a capital raiser. As an engineer, I shouldn't be a capital raiser because it's sales and marketing, and I'm an engineer. But um, it allowed me the most flexibility to work remotely. Because, like I said, a lot of the other team players, sometimes you got to be the boots on the ground person, like asset managing or the acquisition. So I fell into that role. And what was really cool about this role is I didn't have to dedicate myself to one team. Because most operators, you want investors, or investors should be investing with operators who are an expert in like one or two things. And that's, say, for instance, the expert in Class B value adds in Dallas Fort Worth. But if you're an investor and that's the only person, the only group that's all you're getting is Dallas Fort Worth Class B value adds, which isn't very diversified after you've invested in three or four. So me as a capital raiser, I don't have to be just that. I can go find all of these operators around the country that are experts in their thing, and my investors can go with me. My friends, family investors can now have a diversified portfolio because I'm chasing multiple things. Like we're doing built to rent developments. Now I'm doing dentist offices and selling them off to REITs. Build up a medical real estate portfolio.
okay, what's a REIT? You got to I know what a REIT is, but I've got to
Yeah,
make sure
yeah.
everybody's tracking. What's a REIT?
So I wish I could remember this saying. It's a real estate investment trust, but it's basically owning real estate, but it's really just a mutual fund that's backed in real estate. Because you can go on to Fidelity and just throw your money into a REIT.
Right. Mortgage-backed
But
security, regulated by the
yeah,
SEC or the Canadian
yeah,
equivalent. Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I know you and I've talked about a couple things. Let's talk about one more thing. There's an ongoing argument about real estate control, time, and money. Which is the most important?
It depends on who you are.
Okay.
Most of my investors now, as a syndicator, want time. They don't want to
Okay.
spend their time chasing single family homes and then becoming the landlord and managing it. They rather say take $50,000 and passively invest it with us into a large portfolio where it's diversified. But yes, the downside is you don't have any control, and some people really like having that control.
Well, what do they
On the
say?
money
Take it.
side,
Go ahead,
go ahead.
please. Keep going.
But the money side, the way I look at it is our minimum investments are roughly $50,000. So I don't know how many places you can buy now for $50,000 down payment. I mean, you absolutely could with my $80,000 duplex, but for those out there looking, $50,000 doesn't get you very far. Maybe you could probably buy some condos now, but yeah, with ours, you can get into these big apartment deals.
I always say to my husband, you get good, fast, and cheap. You can only pick two of the three. So you pick
Yep.
you pick the two. So when you're talking about, real estate and maybe if you zoom out investments in general, control time or money, it's there's a lot of people who don't necessarily care about the control. They've got the money and
Yeah.
they want more time for themselves. But if you're short on money, then that means that you have to have control and you have to be
Yep.
willing to budget the time. And I think a lot of newbie real estate investors who are jumping in like you did that result in big lessons learned with your duplex, that you're gonna have to over budget on your
Yes.
time and your money. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the new real estate investors come in undercapitalized, or they don't know how to ask for capital. And I guess
Yes.
that's one of my questions to you is how do you what an awkward conversation to have and say, hey, you want to throw some money in with us? We're gonna buy 300 units and wherever. I mean, that's so weird to say. How
Um,
do you do that?
it's such a great question. Um, Most of what I do is education on LinkedIn, to be honest, and people find me because we talk
Okay.
about the returns, the potential, the benefits. When you get into commercial real estate, there's additional benefits like depreciation. There's accelerated depreciation where you can write off, but being careful with that. If you don't have passive income already, the depreciation doesn't really do you much, other than the rental income that's coming in is probably tax free because you've depreciated it. But this is where if you look out in the future, because it's a long term, this isn't get rich quick, but most wealthy people own a lot of real estate. And with a lot of real estate, you have a ton of passive income coming in. And if you go buy another apartment building or something, you get a huge depreciation hit, tax benefit on that, which can counteract all the other money you've made. So the best saying is the 4 Ds to never paying taxes: defer, 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 die. Just constantly. So
Okay.
you're stuck. Once you're in real estate, you're like, oh, well, I got to stay in it now. Got this passive income. I better go buy something new, get more passive income, get write off. Yeah, you sell this place, you get capital gains. You got to go buy another one, 1031. So there's a lot of games that the wealthy play just to reduce their tax burden, and that's it.
And I know you're talking on the US side, but I know there are other international investors listening to this that there are ways to defer some of this. Maybe not capital gains. In Canada, you can't. There's no 1031 exchange in Canada. When you do a sale, that the government gets their money, and that's the end of the discussion. But there are ways that you can be clever on that, which is interesting. But yeah, awkward conversation on how to ask for money. But it's even better when you're not asking. They're coming to you saying, how do I make money with my
Yeah.
money? Here's my money.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me
Here's my
more.
money,
What's
Flint.
this? Yeah. A lot of people are, I mean, and they do end up down that road. They're like, I know that I want to own real estate, but I just don't want to do it. Well, you're join
Fair
me.
enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. If they don't want to be answering, sewer backup calls at 2 in the
Yeah.
morning and they don't want to identify as a landlord and they don't want to do that, okay, well then there's a spot for them too, which is what you're doing
Yeah.
now, which is cool.
Yeah.
That's good. If a listener wants to get a hold of you, Flint, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. My website is vestiscapital.com, but most people can't find it because they forget about Vestis Capital. So go to investwithflint.com and it'll take you right to my website.
Awesome. We'll check that out. Investwithflint.com. Any parting thoughts?
I guess the only parting thought I have is, and I mentioned it earlier, you can take action sooner than you think you can. So don't spend 3 years trying to educate yourself on something. I mean, one, go hire a mentor, which I ended up doing, but you can take action faster. And if it's getting a mentor now to move faster, do it. But if you're on your 10th book, you're going too slow.
Love it. Thanks for being with me today. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.